Good morning, everybody. So I'm Jackie Ackerman. I have worked for Pearson for, a long time. I hold a senior position in examining and assessment. I'm a master trainer, and I'm here today to talk to you about assessment. It's not going to be on specific questions. It's really looking at exam techniques. So looking at what led to success in this year's exam. And we're going to look, especially with paper 2, perhaps what stopped candidates performing better, kind of what they're not doing so well. So we're going to look at both of the papers. It is feedback on the exam. Like I said, we're not going to look at each question individually. We're not going to say, this is what a candidate should have written for this particular question. This is what, or what they shouldn't have written. What we think centres actually want to know is what candidates did that was successful, what they did that was unsuccessful, and then that's going to help you with your teaching, with the learning, and having a really good positive effect on future performance. Now, we've just got an hour. There are 2 elements to the presentation. We've got paper 1, paper 2. So we are going to be moving at pace. I'm going to provide, like I said, generic comments, which you can apply to whatever topic that your candidates have studied. So I have tried to build in a little bit of you time that will give you a little bit of time to think about perhaps what makes the question successful or a candidate successful in a particular question. But I'm not going to be asking you to feed that back because we don't have time, but it will help you, I think, just to sort of jot some notes down and really reflect on what you think would make a candidate successful. And then hopefully that will tally up with what I say, or it will help you to plan for the future. Okay. So what do successful candidates do? What I've tried to do is kind of put this in a way, or I'm going to try and phrase this in a way that you can apply to future exams. So all of the time I'm talking about this, what I want to be saying is successful candidates did this rather than successful candidates should do this. So I want to talk about what they've done that well, not what they should be doing. So forgive me if I misspeak on that. That's really what I want to focus on. Apart from, like I said, on paper 2, I've kind of looked a little bit at, there were a few things that they did get wrong that I really do want to highlight on that. But for paper 1 especially, we're really going to focus on what successful candidates did this summer. So let's begin then. Let's look at these successful things. It's really vital to answer the right number of questions. I know that probably sounds pretty obvious, but you really need to sort of make sure your candidates are very aware of that. Even if an answer's sketchy and they really blank on a question and think, I just can't answer this, but the rest of the kind of suite of questions is what they want to do. But get them to do something, because a 0 on a question is going to have an impact, a really big impact on their overall mark. So what successful candidates did this year was they generally avoided lengthy answers to those short questions, the low tariff questions. And they also really took a note of the dates. So really get them to think about, what is a question worth in terms of marks? How many examples should be given in this? And that will give them an idea of how long an answer ought to be. But they need to really be highlighting those dates, any dates given in a question, because the dates are there to really save candidates having to do too much work. So anything outside of those dates, no matter how good it is going to be have to be ignored by the examiner. So that's just going to be obviously wasting their time. High scoring candidates also really demonstrated an understanding of what each question type required. So apart from the multiple choice, there are only 3 types of question on paper 1, and those successful candidates in the exam their success often revolves around knowing what to do in an answer as much as they know the history. It's how to answer that question really shows through on those very successful candidates. So yes, they know the information. I'm certainly not saying that isn't a very big part of being a successful candidate, but it's knowing what to do with it. So both of them are really, really important. So or I'll just go back a second because I just before we go on to the B question, I'll just quickly talk about A. I don't want to ignore that completely, but it's a multiple choice question. Either they know the answer or they don't on this one. So they don't want to spend too much time thinking about it. If they don't know, get them to guess. Don't just ignore it. Just, it's worth a guess. There's no penalty for getting it wrong. So they might as well just have a guess. But if we move on and have a look at the question B, just have a bit of a ponder. What was the key to success on this question? And have a think about what common mistakes you think candidates make on this. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes to just have a think about that. What was the key to success on question B? And what common mistakes did candidates make? And then I will have a bit of a talk with you about that, and hopefully you'll be thinking along the same sort of lines. Okay, so have a look at these. You've got two answers here. Which answer do you think scores higher? I'll just let you have a read. I don't know. You'd need to contact Pearson about this because I don't know too much about it, but I know textbooks are something that schools are interested in. I think the old book has got sort of detailed advice on how to answer each of the questions, but it's having to go for a read. It's had to have some information changed, and I think it's going for approval now. So it has to go through quite a rigorous process and various stages, but I don't know much about that. So it's not something I'm kind of aware of too much. It's just I'm a bit vague on that, but I know school, myself, when I was in school, textbooks are something that you want to get hold of and have a good one. So if you've got the old one, I think it's page 36 gives some advice on this one. But I know that it's going for approval at the moment, so hopefully you'll get some new ones soon. Okay. So key points then on this question here. This one, answer A has got a lot of unnecessary detail. Okay, the answer that scores higher is answer B. And you really need to sort of get that across to your students that they don't need to be writing too much for this. And you know, answer A is a nice example of where a student has given a lot of unnecessary detail and actually only makes 1 point. So hopefully you had answer B there as the answer that scored higher. So when you were sort of pondering this and sort of making your notes about what you need to do to be successful in B, hopefully you said that they need to make 2 points, not 3. I understand why they make 3 sometimes if they're not quite sure, and that, you know, that's good practice, but they don't really, they haven't got time to labour on that and spend too long. They're only going to be marked on 2 points. Explanation is not wanted for this answer. The answers don't need to be like, you know, the previous slide showed, they don't need to be in full sentences. It's a 2-mark question. So the most successful candidates this summer did not spend a lot of time on this and were still getting full marks. I would advise don't spend more than 2 minutes on it. So if you know, if the answer can be given in 2 words, do it. You know, that's enough. Get it done quickly and try not to give more than 2 points. I mean, the advice I should be given is don't give more than 2 points, but I do understand if perhaps they're a bit worried about 1 point perhaps not being strong enough. But really, if they know they've got 2 solid points, move on. Okay. Right, another ponder slide for you. Question C. So what's the key to success on this question? And what common mistakes did candidates make? So I'll give you a couple of minutes just to have a think about that, and we'll move on and have a look and see what you think of the answers that I've put on the slides. Okay, so what do you think of this answer? Well, hopefully you can see that it's very poor, doesn't address the question until the last sentence. And then it's just a hint, isn't it? So level 1 at best. So what do we expect? Well, the key to success is really appreciating that in a question like this, the question is not about what the opposition was, but why it existed. So it's reading the question really carefully and kind of highlighting those key words, making sure they're very aware of what the examiner is going to be looking for. And an explanation of why the cause given brought about opposition is necessary. It's not enough to say they didn't like it, because what successful candidates did is explain why some people didn't like them and why that then led to opposition. Most successful candidates didn't waste time by going straight into the answer by using the words of the question. Yeah, they really got straight into it. And you've got an example there. So that's, I'll give you a second just to make some notes. And I think you can download the slides anyway. So, which I would probably recommend. So not about what it was, but why, and why the cause given brought about. It's really reading and cracking the code of that question is what successful candidates do. And I've given you an example on here of a level 3. Okay. So let's have a look at the key to success for a D question. I'll give you a minute or so to have a think about this. And then we'll have a look at what successful candidates did. Okay. So let's have a look at what the key to success is here. In the question, so if we look, I think this was, yeah, question 1, I believe. But it's really, you know, this question was not about, you know, just downloading everything you know, on, you know, writing everything you know about the address. It was about the importance of the address compared to at least one other event. So what successful candidates need to do to score the highest marks, there has to be some judgment made. So that's going to be really comparing the importance. So, yes, they need to have that really, really good knowledge, but what they need to be showing is what they've chosen precisely addresses the question. So if you, hope you've got your mark schemes there, but if not, have a look at your mark scheme later. For that level, if we look at the difference between level 3 and level 4, level 3 is using accurate knowledge, whereas level 4 describes it as precise application of knowledge. So that's the difference there. It's what they're choosing to include, that precise knowledge. So we do see in level 3 some really good knowledge, but the level 4 one is really where they've thought about what they're going to choose to write in the answer. And that's, you know, consistent and sustained throughout the answer for a level 4. So just let you have a little look at this slide. But like it says, the response that they give should consider the importance of each of them. And they can do that throughout their answer. They can be making that judgment. Some of them put it on at the end. It's almost like a bolt on at the end, but as long as they do it, we tend to see those more perhaps in the level 3, and then the level 4s, it's linked nicely throughout the answer. So we want them to really consider the importance of each event really as they're going throughout that in the main body of their answer. We tend to see in the lower answers is they're kind of bolting it on at the end. There's just, you know, and that typically wouldn't be a top level answer. Top level answer would be one that nicely weaves it in throughout the answer. It was important because, and they're telling the examiner why it was important. It's clearly signposted throughout their answer there. So let's have a look at this. Oh, I know some people like to know how many times. Sorry, going back to, before we look at that, going back to the key to success, to get 12 marks or more, we do need them to do this 3 times. They do need to be comparing, making judgments at least 3 times to get more than 12 marks. Okay, so, and if we look at this response here, this gives 2 judgments. So I'll let you have a little read of it. So it gives 2 judgments. One is no good. It's just a repeat of what the answer said. And the second one is comparative and would be rewardable. Okay, now before we take a break, what I wanted to do was talk to you about the examiner's report. This comes from the principal examiner. So you will have all been sent this now. And that actually goes down onto specific questions. So you'll have comments then on all of the questions, and it breaks it down. Typically, A and B will be commented on, and then you'll have some nice detail on question C and question D for each of the questions. I'll just take some notes out from the general comments before we have a quick break. So, you know, the principal examiner said that it was really continuing on from an impressive performance from previous years. So we noted that, you know, almost all of the candidates did complete 3 questions. So they, you know, they're understanding that they need to do that. There was little evidence really of candidates misunderstanding questions or finding them inaccessible. So what he has said, though, is that some candidates do not maximize their marks because they don't always use their knowledge to directly answer the question. So what you might like to do is really emphasize these things to your students. I'm just going to concentrate on C and D, but C is about causation. And when the candidate is providing contextual support, they've really got to show how what they're saying is help bringing about the outcome stated in the question. So if they find themselves just, writing lots of narrative, they're not answering the question properly. That's really what you want to get across to them. The question is asking for reasons, not telling a story. So that's something to really point out. And I think we've looked at that as well, going through the PowerPoint today. In question D, what you don't want is answers confined just to the importance of the factor or the issue that's given. It's much wider than just that. So they need to be really, in order to achieve the highest marks, they've got to bring in those other factors. And we've just really kind of gone over that. And they've got to reach a conclusion and compare. The majority of their answer is going to be on other factors rather than just the one in the question. Perhaps that's the way to show that to them. I think what we'll do is, I don't think we need 5 minutes, but if we just take a couple of minutes now, what I'd like you to do, please, is if you can get your stuff out for paper 2, perhaps if you've got your mark scheme there for paper 2, that might help you. And I'll start again in a couple of minutes. I'm going to make no apologies here for repeating my point from paper 1, that it's vital to answer all questions. That's what successful candidates do. They answer all of the questions. And on paper 2, that's all the questions. One on the physical environment, one on the human environment, and one on challenges for Pakistan. So if you've got, your paper 2 there to hand for the rest of the presentation, what I'm going to do, I'm not going to get into giving answers to the questions. I'm about giving tips on how to answer the questions. So, like I said, on paper 2, I was going to have a little look as well at what my candidates do wrong and give you a little bit of time to think about it. But successful candidates really thought about what each answer was worth in terms of marks and how many examples had to be given. This, they get an idea of how long an answer ought to be. That's really what they need to be gauging. How much is this answer worth, and understanding very clearly. I mean, it might seem obvious to a lot of people, but pressure of exams and these young people don't always understand that perhaps a lower tariff answer doesn't need the time that the high tariff answers do. So I think that really needs to be drilled into them. So what else did they do? Well, they demonstrated an understanding of what the demands were of the different question types. So yeah, there are more question types on paper 2, but the majority of the marks are for questions C, D, E, and F. So make sure that they are aware of how to structure their timing in the exams. That's definitely what more successful candidates do. More successful candidates also read the question thoroughly. They really need to have a very precise understanding of what's required. So they need to do what the question says. So when they are clearly given more than one reason or cause, when they've been told to provide one, they're just wasting time. So if they are told to provide one reason for something, that's what they need to do. And that might be that they're not reading the question thoroughly enough. what we saw in the question about the seasonal variations in temperature in Pakistan, there was a range of answers there, and that suggested that candidates haven't read the question properly. They're kind of making it the question they want to be. They're seeing keywords jumping out to them and thinking about perhaps what they know. They need to stop doing that. They need to read the question really thoroughly and really crack the code of what the question is asking them to do, what have they got to produce here, not just writing everything they know about that particular topic. And I think it would be, good practice to do that regularly in your teaching and learning, so they're used to that, because the pressure of the exam can be a lot for young people, and you might well have done this very carefully in your revision sessions, but if they're not used to doing it a lot throughout the teaching, they may well just forget and just think, oh, I'm going to write everything I know about temperature in Pakistan, and that is what we see, it's what we saw this summer. The questions state 2 physical factors which influence the distribution of Pakistan's population. We saw a large number of candidates write about human factors here. So they talked about roll and rail networks, or they talked about, large urban centres. So again, they're not reading the question carefully. Question 3B was about the implications of the increased life expectancy, not why life expectancy has increased. So it's just being really careful about how they're reading it. Okay. So I've put questions A and B together, and the key to this is really, get it answered and kind of move on. So the key to success here is really getting them to understand what the marks are for the 2 questions, and one of them gives data that's going to help them, but they don't need to give an explanation. They don't need to be writing in full sentences, and really get it answered, move on. That's really what they need to be doing with these questions. They don't want to be spending more than a few minutes here, because they want the time for the other questions that are worth a lot more marks. But I reiterate my earlier point, don't write something. Don't leave it blank. That's definitely a key to success there. They need to write something. Okay. So for the question C, what do you think candidates might do wrong on this type of question? So I'll just give you a minute to have a think about this. This is the questions. This was on question 1, wasn't it, in the summer's exam? So the C question. Now, if you look at your mark scheme for this one, they get 1 mark for the initial cause, and then they get the 2 further marks for expanding on that. They obviously can't get more than 3 marks, no matter how well they do it, which is why they don't, want to be spending 20 minutes on it. They need to be really, however much a question is worth, really is how long you should be spending on questions. But they will only credit, the examiners will only credit one course. And, you know, that's very clear in the mark scheme. So just make sure that they're aware of that. So 1 mark for the initial course, 2 further marks for the details that they're adding to that. So let's have a look at just some things we saw in the summer. So they need to write about it, and they need to write about the course. What they're doing, if they're getting this wrong, is just telling us all they know about glacial melting. They're not telling us what the cause was. So it's really highlighting that word, you know, highlighting the word cause, so they know they're going to focus on that. They certainly don't want to waste time writing about more than one cause, like I said. Okay, let's have a look at question D. So what do you think candidates might do wrong with this type of question? So that's, again, from this summer's exam. So they've got the picture of the wind power plants. And they've got to suggest 2 reasons why Pakistan has suitable locations for developing wind energy. So we're looking for 4 marks here. Well, the first thing a candidate might do wrong with this type of question is not give 2 reasons. So again, it's getting that very clear, but highlighting that in the exam, understanding that they've got to give 2 reasons. They just give 1 reason, no matter how well they do it, they're not going to get more than half marks. So successful candidates are going to give 2 reasons. So if they give more, of course, they're not going to get any more marks. So, you know, it's balancing that out. They don't want to be wasting time. They need to make sure that they're given that outline reason. They're expanding on that reason, and they do that twice. Okay. So what do we see then in the summer? Well, we definitely saw them not giving candidates that were not successful didn't give 2 reasons. But what they also did was they gave the type of location, and they didn't explain why those locations were suitable for wind. That was, you know, and I think they knew it, and they knew where good locations were, but they didn't say why. So they need to be saying why where they've chosen is suitable for wind. So again, just to clarify, 1 mark for the reason, 1 mark for supporting it. Okay, let's have a look at question E. All right, so we've got 6 marks here. What do you think candidates might do wrong on this type of question? And about that. Hopefully you've got your mark scheme available. But we've got levels here. So it needs to be, successful candidates need to be showing a thorough understanding. And they need to make sure that what they're saying is accurate and also relevant to the question. And then they need to be linking their answer to the question and developing it. Now, what candidates typically do wrong on this type of question is they talk about the TNCs, but they don't explain the benefits. So again, you know, it's all down to reading the question. It really is. Also, we do see, so candidates, if they get it wrong, they explain the benefits too generalized, sort of not the government of Pakistan, kind of Pakistan in general. So talk about perhaps investment, sort of helping out when there's a natural disaster, something like flooding. But the level 3 answer really has shown that they have read that question. Their answer is thorough. They are giving accurate and relevant information and developing it. So basically, I'd translate that to you know, they're giving sensible reasons and they're supporting. So they're giving a sensible reason, they're supporting that with examples. That's really how I would teach that. Okay. Question F. What do you think candidates might do wrong on this type of question? So I'll let you have a think about that. You've got your mark scheme, hopefully, and you can perhaps have a think about what you think they might do wrong. And they've really got to focus, haven't they, on that command word. They're being asked to assess. So that's going to require them to think of other factors. And they're going to have to explain what ones are most important. So that's really what they need to be thinking about. So thinking about what candidates might do wrong on the F question, well, just writing about the challenges, just, you know, writing about everything they know about the challenges and not assessing them. So they're not deciding which one they think is the most serious. That's really what the key is here. And also, they really need to be thinking this out. They need to be using their brains and really saying to themselves, what's different about rural that wouldn't apply to urban? So if we look at the top level for the mark scheme here, they've got to demonstrate accurate understanding of concepts. They've got to show an understanding of the interrelationship between places, environments, and processes. They've got to provide an argument that is balanced. They've got to bring in those other factors. They've got to develop that for the top level. They've got to really show a really good, thorough understanding or consideration, I believe the mark scheme says, that, you know, of the factors. And that is then going to lead them into a nice top level answer. That's going to lead them into a judgment. And then we want a final conclusion with well-supported evidence. So what do we need? How can we sum that up? Well, identify a couple of factors, explain them, consider how important they are. So let's just have a quick look at the principal examiner's report, which you will have had. And I've got a copy of it here. And what he's done, he's gone through each of the questions, giving you some really nice tips on all that. So I really do encourage you to read these. They are you know, they're super helpful for your planning for next year. But just to sum up the general comments, candidates demonstrated secure, accurate knowledge and understanding of many of the topics. So then we've got a little bit here about the different sections, the short multiple choice questions and longer answer questions. I'm basically telling you what the paper's like. I'm not going to go over that because we've just gone through that anyway. I think this is definitely worth pointing out. What he said is candidates who did refer to the resources tended to be awarded higher marks. So, you know, I mean, they are there to help them. So please use them. You know, they're there to support them. And then it breaks down some of the questions into percentages of where candidates had excellent knowledge and understanding. I'll let you read that. I won't read that out to you because you've got a copy of it there. But we're talking about weaker candidates. A significant proportion of candidates were very insecure when answering questions based on two specific topics. So that could be something to focus on. So we've got the nature and causes of seasonal variations in precipitation and temperature, including the characteristics and causes of the southwest monsoon and western disturbances. Candidates were not secure when answering those questions this summer. And the trends in fertility rates, infant maternal mortality rates and life expectancy and their implications for service provision, things like education, healthcare and employment, that was not addressed well either. So, and then it goes on and it looks at each question in more detail. So I think I've made my point there. Please do look at those reports because they're really there to help you and give some really useful tips there. So like I said, what today's been about, I'll stop sharing my screen now, is really looking at the generic things that have made the exam successful this summer. And I hope you found that useful. Please let Pearson know if you've got any specific questions, and hopefully that textbook will be sorted out. And that will have the advice I've gone through today is in there. So for each question broken down and is in there. But it's been really nice talking to you today. And I wish you all the best, you and your candidates. And I look forward to seeing the exam next summer and seeing how successful they've all been. So I will say goodbye and thank you very much.